That can be ran on a schedule, or you can run them on at a specific time. The customer action queue requires a setup in the task scheduler, and this allows you to make changes to customer accounts, move-ins, move-outs, altering the account information, different things like that, and we're going to get into all of that. To get to the task scheduler, and this is the best place to start since we have to have a job set up in there for the customer action queue. You can go there through System Administration, System Configuration, and Task Scheduler. And these are the options that we're going to be looking at. You have the Notify. This is no longer working in Impresa. It used to run on a program called OMail that existed before email was widely used. And so we no longer have that option in the new system in Impresa or ICIS. So that's been taken away. There is some talk about bringing that back in the form of sending out emails from the system, but I'm not certain when or if that's going to be added back to the system. But it still shows up as an option. You have penalties, and this is the same process that you would normally do. Anything that we do in the action queue is processes that you can manually make happen in the system, not on a schedule, just whenever you go in there and run those processes. So penalties, it runs the same way. Redistribute credits is an option. So all of this can be set up to run on a schedule, and normally this is done so that you can run these after hours when everybody's off of the system. You have the transfer to GL that can also be set up to run on a schedule. So we're going to jump in right there and just start with that and look at the program itself and see where all of these options are. Let me just move this off the screen here. And I wanted to mention that if you do have questions, make sure you select host, because if you ask the question directly to me, Kayla may not be able to see that, and I won't see it until the end of the webinar. So, and if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to ask at all. So we're looking at one of our demo databases here. Anytime you open Impresa, make sure that your versions match. 4.5, this is your installed version. This is your database version. If they don't match, you're going to have the potential to run into some problems. To get to the task scheduler, we're going to go to System Administration, System Configuration, and then Task Scheduler here on that menu. As that comes up, once we get in here, you have the ability to set everything up here. This is the screen we're going to be looking at. You have your normal options at the top. To add a new one, you would hit the screen plus. Right now, I've already got the customer, and I've got penalty set up twice here so that we can look at it. But this is the customer action queue task type. If we were to set up a new one, I'm just going to hit the green plus here. Everything is blank. We would have to decide what we're wanting to do. So if we look at our task type, use the drop down here, you can see all of the options that were listed on that Word document. You have notify, again, doesn't work. We're thinking about bringing that back. You have the penalties that can be scheduled for another time, redistribute credits, customer action queue, and UB transfer to GL. So if we were to make one for redistribute credits here, we would give it a code, whatever we'd like. And I'm going to say redistribute credits for cycle 1. Hopefully it'll accept that code being that long, and it may not. Let's do this then. We'll just call it red 1. And then a description, of course, of whatever you'd like to call it. Cycle 1. Notification mode, this is another thing that because of the way the programming is done, it's required, but it uses that OMail in IUS, and we no longer have that option here. But it is required to have something in there, so always just set it with admin. If you don't have it in there, it could cause problems with the way this all works. You have your schedule type. You can do either a single execution or a recurring execution. I've seen it done both ways. If you got to change up your options here and do other operations before you redistribute that evening, single execution will work for you so that you can come in here and make changes and change when you actually want it to run. Reoccurring is going to run on a schedule, and we'll take a look at how that works. As you can see down here, once you select this task type, the general tab here is going to show it with all the information that you need for the normal operation. If you were to do that through utility billing, I think is in periodic and the redistribute credits, you have the same options here, except for you can't do an individual account here. You have to do it by billing cycle. So the redistribute, if we're going to do cycle 1, I want to select that. I want to select which income centers that can be redistributed. This is good if you are trying to keep all of your fees and everything separate. If you don't want water to redistribute over into sewer, any of your payments or anything like that, for reporting purposes, you can just come in here and only select the ones that you want to be able to redistribute to. Of course, then your penalty method, if you have this selected, then anything that gets redistributed, the penalty method has to be set up for that in order for it to get a penalty. All right, so once all of this is set up, we can look at our schedule. The schedule, it occurs daily, it can occur weekly, it can occur monthly. If we have it set to weekly, it's one time, and we can choose the days of the week. So it's actually more than just one time a week, but every 1 week. And we can choose to have it run every single day or just a number of days whenever you'd like. This is the scheduled end of things. Daily frequency, this will tell us when it's going to run. I have it set for 11:05. This you may have to change a little bit up or down by 3 or 4 minutes, depending on what other scheduled jobs you have on the server. If you're finding that this task is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, it may be conflicting with something else, another job that's already running on your server. If you run into that, just let us know. We can jump on there and do a little bit of research to figure out how to, adjust this to where it's not conflicting with another job. Daily frequency, or it can occur more than one time in a day. If you want to do it every hour, every 3 hours, every 5 hours, however you'd like to do that, every minute, you can have this set up to just constantly fire off. Now, you don't want to do that for redistribute credits. That's one of those processes that you only want to do when nobody else is doing anything with any type of financial connection at all in the system, because you can cause some data corruption. It's rare, but we've seen it happen. So then the start date, you can have it start on a date. It's just going to default to today's date, and then the end date or no end date. So if you want this to run for a month just to see how it's working, you would give it an end date and tell it when to stop. If you know that this is what you want to happen consistently, you would just let it run, no end date. So all of these settings here, this is for the schedule, and you can see this is going to translate over to any other type of task that we set up. If you want a single execution, it's a little bit more simple. You just select that up here in the schedule type. You will see the date that you want it to run. So maybe I want it to run a month from today. And at what time you'd like it to run. I'd like to run maybe at 5 o'clock or 5:30 after I go home, which would be PM. And then that will now be set up to run one time, and once it runs, it will never run again until you come in here and set up a new date for that to run. So that would be your redistribute credits. I'm not going to save that one. We're going to look at the next one that we can do. We can do some penalties here. I have a couple of those set up. You're going to see that the options change now on your general tab. You have your penalty group, which on this database, we only have one group. You can increment times penalized, which will allow the customer screen to count if the customer gets a penalty. It'll keep a count of how many times they've been penalized. The due date offset is for the penalty due date. If you leave this blank, the penalty is going to go on without a due date, which means that it will be included in your next bill run. All of these are the same options that you would have when you're running penalties through the utility billing periodic. You can choose which cycle that you would like, and I'm going to cancel our changes and look at what I've already got set up here. Just kind of as an example of what you can do. Once you have some things set up, you can look at the search for here, and I have penalties here, which I want to do billing cycle 1 and 2, and then penalties 2 is going to do it for final bills, lift stations owner, and septic haulers. So I've just chosen 2 different things here to demonstrate the use of this screen. If you want to do penalties on one day, you know, in the month, you know, on the first Friday of the month for only cycle 1, then you would only set that up, and then you could do it for the last Friday of the month. Now, the schedule, you would just have to choose. These are the only options you have, so you actually couldn't do it for a specific day on the month. But you can choose these options here, so you can get it pretty close to being like the last Friday or whatever. Anyway, this doesn't change. You're going to get the same options for your schedule every time, so I'm not going to go through that for each one of these. But your options here will change. So I have penalty 2 and 1 set up for you on that. And basically, that's all you have to do. Once you have these set and you have them scheduled, they're going to run when this schedule is set. So at 3:46 p.m., you're going to have this run. It's going to occur one time a day, or whatever, one time on Sunday, according to what we have set up here. We could choose different days as well for that. And then it's not going to end. So penalty 2 is set up the same way. We set it for a different time and date. It's going to be done on Thursdays. And we're good to go on that. If there's any questions about the setup of this, it's pretty straightforward on each one of these. The customer action queue, I'm going to save that for last since we're going to transition over to that here in a minute. But utility billing, transfer to GL, it's the same process you're going to get in periodic transfer to GL here. Once you have that set up, we're going to look at the task there. If we look at the general here, and let me do this here just so there's no confusion on that. I'm going to do a green plus, so everything's blank. I'm going to give it a code. Change our UB transfer to GL here, set my notify, and then these are the options we have for the transfer to GL. Utility billing, transfer to GL options, separate payments by audit number. We can turn that on or turn it off. It's the same options you're going to get in this periodic transfer to GL screen here. It just allows you to run it on a schedule after hours. So adjustments, we can have all of these selected. We can have 1 or 2 of these selected, whatever we'd like. Include inventory, don't include inventory. I'm not certain how this would react if you have our Dynamics Great Plains GP product. Because after you transfer to GL in there, you're prompted to transfer to GP as well directly, which is financial software. So on that, we may have to take a look at how this screen would function if we have the option to even use this if you have the Great Plains software. All right, and then the last that we're going to look at, I'm going to cancel my changes one more time. I'm going to create a new, and well, I'm going to use what we already have. So let me cancel one more time and look at our customer action queue. All right, and so the customer action queue is pretty straightforward. You have the same options here to set up single execution or recurring. And then you have the ability to process customer charges, process move-ins, move-outs, and process transfers. If you don't want to do all these at the same time, you can set 2 of these customer action queues tasks up and only select the ones that you would like to process on certain days of the week or whenever you have it set for the schedule. And we're going to look at these here and see what options we have with the customer action queue. All right, so that is this is a required setup in order for the customer action queue to work in the system. And from there, we're just going to move straight to that. And I'm going to pull our sheet up here again. So there's 3 different places that we need to go to for the customer action queue: utility billing, UB administration configurations, and action queue. And I'm going to include this little outline here so that you have the ability to go to these and take a look at everything here. The customer maintenance screen has the option to actually set up the customer action queue for that customer, and we're going to look at that. Utility billing, periodic, and action queue manager it allows you to manage what actions you have scheduled to run, and these are the options we have for the customer action queue. So when you're in the customer screen, you have the option to set up an alter action that will allow you to change things on the customer's account. If you need to change the bill to address, you can do that there and set it up. Maybe you don't need that to happen until next week. You set that up here, and it will do it when you tell it to. Move in action, you can move a customer into a new service location. You can move the customer out of service location, or you can transfer a customer from one location to another. So the first thing we're going to look at is the default configurations, and that can be found in configurations action queue. And let's just jump back into the software for that. So that's going to be utility billing, UB administration, configurations, and action queue. Now when we come over here, we're going to see these are just default setups, so that when you go into the customer screen and go to the action queue for that customer, these are the things that are going to be pre-populated in those fields, and you can change them at any time if you need to. So if you only use action queue for certain operations, you have the ability to streamline that process and have everything set up beforehand when you click on the button to work in that customer action queue. So you can have the this is just action queue defaults, then you have the move out defaults and the move in defaults. The billing status, ignore final bill sent, whatever billing statuses you have set up, it will just default to filled on that screen to that status. Default action is alter. You can have any of these as your default. So if you only use it for move-ins, then it's always going to pop up with move-ins first if you have that set, or right now it's set to alter only. So every time you get in there, it's going to be alter. Then if you need to do a move in or move out, you can change it on that screen at that time. Set days for meter read. Each of these is related to a field. Number of days past action date that balances are due. So this is a due date offset for whatever action you're doing, that if it causes a new charge or adjustment to go onto that account, it's going to use this as a default for the due date for that balance. Notify creator, again, this doesn't work. Notify user, we're going to leave those blank. Save report. If there are reports associated with that action, this will save them so that you can pull them back up later. Move-ins, move-outs, you have the ability to put an adjustment on an account for the move-in and move-out, adjustment amount, meter switch required, and I'm not quite certain how this works here. I believe that, again, it's just a default, so it can be changed on the screen, but I don't remember seeing that on the screen, so I'm going to have to look into that for y'all. The job type, if you want to create a work order during a move-out action or a move-in action, you can give this a job type, and it will, if it has a job type, then that action, whenever it fires, it will create a work order for you in the system, and you can print that out later. Refund deposits if you're doing a move out, and these are the same options you're going to get if you're finaling a customer out or detaching them from their service location, doing a final bill process, I believe. So reconnect to the owner requires work order to be closed before this gets processed. Same with the move-ins. You've got the same options here. Mark new balances as billed. So anything that's generated here in the move-in action, it will be seen as already been billed. So when you print a bill for this customer, they will all their balances will show up as previous balance. So require work order to be closed again is an option here. So days plus or minus relative to move in for the work order to start. So this is an offset for when you, I believe, when you process the move in, that it will create a work order, and you have the ability to let everybody know, whoever's working on that work order, when to actually start that job or that work. And you have your job types again for creating work order. Mark the deposit as paid is an option there as well. These are all defaults again. We'll have to go through these. If you have questions about how these work or anything, then we'll get in here and just let us know, and we'll work on this. So let's jump back over after we see that. Now we want to actually go in and create an action queue process for a customer. So we're going to go to the customer action queue. It's going to be the utility billing, account maintenance, customer, and then we're going to have to select that from the process menu at the top. And once we get there, we are going to see all the options that we have, because there's quite a bit there, and I didn't throw them all on this sheet that we have. So account maintenance, customer, and as that's coming up, bring this back over here, we are going to see that we can create a new action or alter an account. We can move the account into a new location, move the account out, transfer account from one location to another. And the alter, there's quite a bit of information on that alter that we can do. So I want to come in here and I just want to choose a active account just randomly here, and I want to come up here to go to the action to. This is a process that will allow us to add a new action that will then be ran or processed when the task scheduler fires that job in SQL. So once that comes up, we're going to see the action queue tab here. We are going to see the customer's information here at the top. This is going to be our action that we want to look at, and the action is alter right now because that's our default action from our configurations. This is just going to give us some basic information about our customer in that customer's current state right now. If we want to do any of the other actions, we want to move them in or move them out of a location, this is what we would use, or transfer here. We'll just leave it on alter for now. And with alter, you're going to see the customer information that you want to change. So if this customer has a primary phone number and it has changed, or if they know that it's going to change in the future, let's say they know they're going to get a new phone and their phone number is going to have to change in a week, then you can come in here and set up an action for this to happen and give the new phone number that this is going to change to. So this will stay until that is actually processed and it causes the phone number to change. So you have if you need to change their last name, if they get married or some other event happens, then that causes a name change. You can come in here and make those, and it will fire off on the schedule that you have. The bill to address. When you come in here to change the bill to address, you don't want to just change the address that you have, because this is linked directly to that customer screen. What you'll want to do is hit the plus and add a new address, and then tell it to change to that new address as a bill to address, to make if their bill to address is changing. If you just change this here, it's going to try to change this and on the customer screen itself, and it's going to cause you some problems. I'm going to cancel out of that. So you have all of this information here that you can do: new first name, new alternate name. You can put them in a new billing cycle. You can change their billing status if you use that field. You can have a new status for them, active, inactive, or those are only two options there. Phone numbers can be changed, and then here you have the ability to make an adjustment. And anytime you make an adjustment, you have the ability to make an adjustment straight to the customer's account, but for the most part, you want those adjustments to be attached or associated with a service location. So if they have a service location, then you want to make sure that you select their service location, and then make your adjustments, set your adjustments up here. These are the same adjustments that you have when you're on the customer screen. And you can give it an amount, and then you can make a second adjustment if you needed to, or if you wanted to. You can activate penalizable or activate lockable. If you turn that on or off, I was thinking that it would give you the option to put in a reason, but it's not giving me that option there. All right, and so that is the alter customer. And this one here doesn't look like it gives you the option to create a work order for that alter action. All right, and I'm going to cancel those changes. Then we're going to look at the move in, and that is going to change our options here, customer information. So our customer information here, it currently is still up at the top. We have a move-in action. We can change some of their information here if we needed to. And then, so it still gives you the option to do some changes to the account information like the alter does. But then you have your move-in tab here where you can search for a service location that you want to move this customer into, make this service location a bill to address that does that for you. You can give them a deposit if you use deposits in the system, and you can mark that as paid if you do give them a deposit. You can apply an adjustment to this account as well at the time of the move-in. The start date, this is going to be seen on the service location screen under the connections tab here. And you can leave it blank, or you can add a start date, but that's going to go here in this field, whichever you have activated the group and all of that. And that's also probably going to change. I haven't tested it out, but I'm pretty certain it's going to change this prorate status to new as well, just as a default. So if that's not what you're wanting to do, then we'll have to make sure that you go to that service location and deactivate it afterward. So water deposit, paid, adjustment amount, start date, due date on any charges or anything that is created here, which would be your adjustments. Or you can do a default due date, and that defaults the adjustment to, it uses some math or criteria that sets it back to the previous due date on some charges there, I believe. That's something that you would have to test out to make sure it's going to do what you expect it to do. So then we have meter reads. You would have to put in your new reading for the meter because you're starting new service. You're basically adding the customer to the service location as if they just moved in there. So whatever the previous meter read was, you want the new reading to start. So you're normally going to send somebody out to get that reading off that meter, so that you're not charging this customer extra for uses that they didn't actually use. So you can give them a previous reading, a new meter reading. If you want it to be 0 for the usage, you would just use the same meter reading here. You'd have to give it a read date, and the demand of course is going to calculate on its own. So once you have that, then I will have to find out for you what these do. I'm not quite sure. Is system required or ignore? I'm not really quite sure what those options are, so I'm going to have to follow up on that. But this is your booking sequence, your group. It's already going to have this assigned if your meter is attached to the service location already, which it should be. If it's not, then that's something else you'll have to set up beforehand, before this action is set to run and to actually process this move in. And that's something that I've kind of missed on the other ones as I've talked about as well, is you have the action date. So your action queue task manager schedule runs this job every single night, or whatever your schedule is that you set this job to. But if you want this action to not happen today, maybe you want it to happen next, at the end of the month, then you would do that and set that action to only occur then. This will set in your action queue until this date, and then it will process that action once that job runs. And that's why there's no time frame on this. It's just a date, because that job is going to run when you have it set to run at that in the evening or whenever you have it set to run. So it's going to run on that day at 10:30 at night or whenever we set up the customer action queue to run in the task scheduler. So once that is done, let's see, we have a work order must close to process the action, which means that it's going to generate a work order when this is created. That work order will then have to be printed out and given, or if you're using our FieldHawk application on the tablets, that will have to be assigned to a user, and they'll have to go out and complete that work order and close it before this move-in can be processed. So if you have things that you, in your normal process of setting up a new customer on a service location, that need to be checked before they get moved in, then you can have this selected or unselected. All right. Of course, this is your work order job type and start date. If you have a job type in here, it is going to generate a work order. That is your move-in action. If we change this to a move out, you're going to have the same option. You have the move out here. You have all the same options that you had on the move in, it looks like, and I don't see anything different, so I don't think we have you do have your refund deposit, but these are the options that you would normally have when you're discontinuing service for a customer when they're moving out of the service location or getting a final bill. So you have that information there. You have the work order, and this is useful in that you have a lot of options with your work orders, and we may do a webinar in the future concerning how to use the work orders and what your options are for those. But as you set up different job types for your work orders, you can have this action process the functionality that it has for this move out process. But then you can have that also create a work order that triggers other options and other things to happen in the system. So you have it's very useful, and it's a great tool that will allow you to automate a lot of your processes. I don't see anything else here. Of course, you have your non-metered here. In a final bill process, you have the option to process your non-metered accounts if you have those. So let's see. And of course, the notes up here is something that I think I've glossed over as well. The notes will add a new note to the customer screen when this is processed as well. I think I've gotten everything here that we need. Let's see what we have on the next. So the transfer here. Well, let's go back to the move out, because I think I missed the move out deposit. And of course, this is just the move out deposit. Is the refund. If you want to refund it at this time when this processes, you can check that, or leave it unchecked, and you can manually do that later if you'd like, or if you don't want them to receive their refund. Either way, and that, all of the options that you have set up for your refunds will take place. This doesn't override any of your normal default options. So if we go back to our transfer, you're going to see the option to move them out of a service location, whatever you're going to do with the move out deposit, and then move into the new location. So really, this is just a combination of the move out and the move in, doing it all at one time for this customer. So it's going to process your move out, do whatever you're going to do with the deposit, and then move them in that order when everything, as long as all the conditions are met, like work order must be closed to process the action. So you can have the same thing here where this action is set to be processed. You can have that set for today, and it will never change. It will not process. It'll just keep pushing that back one day at a time until these criteria are met. So if you do this work order, then it'll do the second part of this process. All right. I know I've gone over a little bit here, and I think I've covered everything that I have on our list here. So if there are any questions.
Yes, we do have a question. The question is, when we have to run SQL script to set up the bill address to prevent the account appear in ICIS, how do we prevent that?
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, let me try to say this again. We have to run a SQL script to set up the bill address to make the account appear in ICIS. How can you, I guess, prevent having to run a SQL script to
Okay.
set up bill address?
So what we need to find out on that is when that is occurring, what's causing that to occur. If I'm understanding correctly, when you're trying to add a new customer to Impresa, you come to the customer screen, hit the green plus here, and fill in any of the information here that is bold, because that's all required information. And because of the screen layouts, you have to make sure that this customer's account has a bill to address here. If this doesn't have a bill to address, then you go to save the customer, you're going to lose that account number that you're on, and the customer's not going to save. And then there are times that I'm guessing it's happening because of the action queue, that is creating a new account, or it's causing the bill to address is changing or disappearing, is not being marked. And if that is the
correct.
case, okay.
That is correct. So the account is missing in Impresa because the bill to address is not set. Is there a way to prevent that or bypass it?
Well, what we're going to have to figure out, what we really need to do on that is do a little bit of research and figure out why that's occurring, like what's causing that to happen in that action queue process. The bill to address is required, but one of the reasons why we have the script that we run that will recover the bill to address is because we haven't figured out in the system every place that causes that to happen. If we knew what was causing that to happen, we could submit that as a bug and get development to figure out a way to correct that, so it doesn't happen or it doesn't occur again. If this is something that you know what is causing it to happen, or if you can reproduce it consistently and that allows us to reproduce it on our side, then we can put in a support ticket for that and get your data and work on that as a bug in the system to get it corrected.
Which would be awesome. Okay, does anyone else have any questions? We'll wait a little bit and see if anything else comes in. Thank you, Chris. That is a lot of information, so we appreciate you kind of breaking it down.
Definitely, no problem. And you know, there are some things here that I'm going to find an answer for, and we'll add that to the Word document here that I'm going to include with the webinar.
Excellent, thank you. And what I'll do with the Word document is I'll just go ahead and I'll email it to everyone who signed up for the webinar. And because it's not something I'll be posting on our YouTube.
We missed the last option here that we can go to, the Action Queue Manager. To get there, we need to navigate to Utility Billing, Periodic, Action Queue Manager. We can view all the actions scheduled to be processed in this screen. We can go to the action queue process to view or edit it, and we can select the action in this screen here to be able to delete it. So jumping over to the software real quick, to be able to find that, we're going to go to Periodic. We're going to the Action Queue Manager. And this is what the screen looks like. We have several, as you can see, actions set up here to be processed. Each line here is one action that was set up in the system. The action dates on these, of course, you can see are 2016, so these are much older. You can sort by the action date here by clicking on the column heading. You can sort by account number if you're searching for a specific account. You may have the option to set up your autofilter row, which we do. So here on the autofilter row, you can use this to search for a specific account, 007721, if you know the account number. And so there's a lot of functionality on the screen just to search for the actions you already have set up in order to process them. So on this screen here, you have the ability to view all the actions, which we're looking at now. You can scroll down and see all of them, scroll over for all the column headings you need. We can see what type of action we have here under action. It's going to be either a move out, move in, alter, or transfer. Transfer there. So we have one of those. Who set the action up, the action date, which is the date that these should be processed, the action last date, that I believe would be for a transfer when you're doing two different things at one time. Of course, is a move in, move out, so you're seeing those same things going on here. The last action status, and you can expand these columns here just to read everything you have. Move in location not available. Move out meter read not available. So this is giving you an idea of what you might need to correct for these to be able to be processed. MI stands for move in parcel number, move in service location, move out parcel number, move out service location, just for the title headings there. And then the option you can do here, if we wanted to check on why this action didn't process, we can go to, and this go to is just to go to not the account, but to the action queue screen that would pull up on the customer account when you create this. So when you look at this, you can see what information is missing, come in here, make corrections, all of that, set up a new action date, anything you need to do, save that information. And then that will show up on your Action Queue Manager again with the new information saved. If you find that you've created this in error and you want to get rid of it, you can come to the Action Queue Manager, highlight the whole line, use the red X, and this will delete the action. It'll prompt you here, are you sure you want to delete this record? Yes, that will no longer process. It no longer exists in the system. You can't recover it, it's gone. And that really should conclude everything that we have here. Those are the options that we have on the screen. And I am done. Hopefully this will get edited back into the webinar.
It will. Thanks, Chris.
Possibly.
Bye.
Right. Bye. You don't have to add that last part.
Oh, good. I didn't.
Good.